Welcome to the Books Between Friends podcast.
3 lifelong friends,
one shared obsession.
Books.
From epic fantasy to page-turning thrillers.
We dive into the stories we love
And the ones we just can't stop talking about.
So take a seat,
Grab a drink,
and get cozy.
So, we like cozy things. Speaking of cozy, what has been keeping y'all cozy these past couple of days? Jen, what about you?
So it's been the weather has been so gloomy lately that it's actually set up like the perfect background for me. I love feeling relaxed, and I don't know what it is about rain, but it does that for me. And so when I've been getting home from work, like I've been going straight to my couch, throwing on a blanket and just reading. And it's been like the coziest I have felt in a while because I don't know, again, like I don't know what it is about rain, but it's been pretty wonderful. Like it's been perfect book weather. Steph, what about you?
Okay, so for those of you who don't know about Texas tornado season, we're in the midst of it. So the bad weather has just been sweeping across all of Texas. And so we're feeling it here in Dallas too. We've had actually one day where they sent us home early from work because of the bad weather. So similar to Jen, that puts me in a cozy mood. But what's funny is that in addition to my reading, we've also been watching the second season of The Last of Us, which is not so cozy, but I just love that show. So if you're not watching it, I encourage everyone to.
Well, like you two, what's been keeping me cozy is obviously the weather. I love rainy weather. That is my fave. So the only downside to that is that I work from home. And so the rainy weather plus working at home doesn't really make for a conducive work environment because I just want to like be in bed and do all the reading. So yeah, it's been a little bit of a struggle as far as that goes, but I do love the rainy weather. And as far as the show that's been keeping me cozy, it is 100% Wheel of Time. I am loving. Now I can't say that I have read the book series in its completion, in its entirety, but I do love the show. I think it's just fantastic. So I've been watching that a good deal, and that's been keeping me cozy.
I know you mentioned the books before. I didn't know it was a show.
Oh my gosh.
It's on season 3, right?
Yeah, it is season 3 wrapped. And so it is Amazon Prime's answer to Game of Thrones. Like it's what, yeah. And it's pretty epic in scale, right? The book series is like a 14 book series.
Books, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty expansive. So yeah, it's epic and it is fantastic. I love it.
Oh.
Well, hello, book friends. This is my turn to start things off. Jen did a fantastic job guiding our conversation in Onyx Storm, but now it is my turn to guide our conversation as our official lore master.
Yeah.
If you are nerdy as we are, then you may have heard of a little thing called Dungeons and Dragons. This is where we got the idea to have some kind of master where it guides the conversation. So instead of a dungeon master, we have a lore master. And for this round in Darker Shade of Magic, that person is me. And now let's go ahead and dive into it. All right, we are so stoked to be discussing our new read on the pod. We spent a lot of time on Onyx Storm. We had a lot of great discussion, a lot of great predictions and theories, but now it's just time to transition and do the same thing with a new series. And so we are reading Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab, and this was our book bracket winner that we had on our social media. And so we're going to discuss the first part, which is parts 1 through 5.
All right, friends, before we get started, quick spoiler warning. If you're listening to this episode, we've assumed that you read through part 5 of this book, so there are going to be spoilers throughout. Now, one thing we definitely wanted to make sure we mentioned was that A Darker Shade of Magic is actually divided up a little differently than chapters. It's divided into 14 parts. So Ethan mentioned earlier, we're diving into parts 1 through 5 today, but the book itself has 14 parts altogether, and every part encompasses like several chapters within. So we're not going to say we're covering chapters 1 through 5. We're covering parts 1 through 5. So we definitely wanted to make sure we put that out there. So let's get into our first impressions. What did we all think about these different parts of A Darker Shade of Magic?
All right. So, like I mentioned, I've already read this one, and I was so excited to see it in our book bracket, and it won. I was looking forward to it because I really wanted to see if I enjoyed reading it the second time just as much as I did the first time, because I really enjoyed it. The first time, it was one of my rare 5-star reads. And so I am happy to report that so far I'm loving it even more the second time around than I did the first time around. Because I guess Jen, you've said this before, like as you do your reread, you pick up on things that you've missed, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I have read it before, I kind of, some things are still stuck in the back of my mind. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this. And then maybe this will happen. Oh no, that doesn't happen like I thought it did. But now I'm reading between the lines and I can see some things. So that just makes it even more fun. I really just appreciate the way this is written. I think it's very clever. I like the way V.E. Schwab writes. I love her writing style. And I think the way she writes exposition specifically, like we're in the beginning parts here, and she's really clever in how she shows you rather than tells you what's going on through the eyes of Kell. I love Kell. He's one of my favorite male characters. And I think it's a really clever way to introduce a different kind of magic system than we're used to seeing in traditional fantasy. We get introduced to the idea of traveling, which really kind of, I think what drew me to this book was Pendragon. Because Bobby Pendragon is a traveler in that book series. And when I read the summary of A Darker Shade of Magic way back when, Kell is referred to as a traveler, I was like, ooh, that caught my attention. And so that's what drew me in. And then I just stayed because of V.E. Schwab's writing. So what about y'all?
Actually, you know what? Now that you say the Pendragon comment, I really didn't think about that until you said it. I was like, oh, that's right. That is one of the things I really loved about Pendragon was the traveling in between the different world, or it was different world as well, right?
Yeah, there are, well, I don't want to spoil it because
Steph is reading it now.
But
he does travel, and it's like really cool, and you get to experience each world. So it's pretty amazing. So when I picked this book up, I was thinking back, like out of the group, I'm the romance girly. Like I love romances, and I obviously love romantasy as well. So I was thinking back, when is the last time I read a book that wasn't romance or that wasn't romantasy? And it's actually been a while since I've read something that's just fantasy. So I was really excited. I really wanted to make sure I liked it because I think I tried to pick up another book that was just fantasy and I couldn't read it. I actually had to DNF it. So I was a little nervous about actually diving in without like a romance to really like latch onto. But thankfully, I've been loving this book so much already. I've been to London myself, so I'm like wanting to see some of the parallels there too. Like what kind of things get introduced in this book? What big landmarks are they going to refer to in these books? So I'm really excited about that. But I do love the different Londons. I love how they all differ from each other. It's super interesting. I love how they focus on all the different rulers in each one too. And honestly, I just really like already have so many questions about Kell and the Antari. Like, I'm just so excited to get into this discussion. Steph, what was your first impression?
Okay, so this is my first V.E. Schwab book, and so I didn't know what to expect going in. And I really didn't read much on it. I just wanted to like have like as blank of a slate as possible going into it and just like go into it, blindly, basically. And so far, I mean, I also, Ethan, am loving her writing style. There's just like this touch of like whimsy and like lyricalness. It like really sets an atmospheric tone that I'm loving. And for those of you who have read the book Coraline, that's one of my 5-star reads, and that's the atmospheric vibe that it's giving me. It's like a little bit of like wonder and whimsy, but like in a dark setting. So I love that juxtaposition of, a world in books and in stories, or like maybe Alice in Wonderland for, those who are more familiar. It's like a children's story, but, there's some really dark elements and themes in that story as well. So that's the vibe and the feeling that I'm getting from this book so far, and I'm loving every second of it. I already know I'm probably going to rate this one highly just based off of what I've read so far. So I'm glad that I went ahead and bought the whole trilogy from the jump. So I'm probably going to continue on after we finish this.
That's so great. That's so great. You have such a great point too, as far as like the whimsy of it and the wonder that it brings out, especially with like the first line of the book, right? It sets the tone immediately because it's talking about his coat, right? Kell wore a peculiar coat, right? It's kind of like when A Wrinkle in Time starts out with "It was a dark and stormy night," right? Like it sets that tone of just what you can expect. Now it's time to get into our deep dive conversation. So we're starting out with part 1, which is an introduction to Kell and Grey London, right? Not just London. We learn that we have more than one London. We have 4. So we start out in Grey London, and this is a scene where Kell is speaking to King George III, and it immediately lets us know, what the setting is, what the time period may be. Like I've said before, it's a great way to provide that exposition, especially the spoken dialogue between Kell and the king. We get a glimpse into how magic is used in this world with his commands of the Antari language like Astasan, and later we'll get into Ostravars, right? So just those simple commands. What did y'all think?
So later I want to touch on the blood magic, and I think that's like later down our discussion. But like initially when I was reading this, did find interesting like his description of the different Londons, like why he named them why he gave them those names, because he gave them those names, that's not what they're called. And so he talks about Grey London just being like this dreary place to be at. And so like I'm imagining back where, like smoke was everywhere and it wasn't like a vibrant city or anything like that. So that's kind of where my imagination took me. But in the beginning, just to be clear, Grey London doesn't have magic, correct? Like this is one of the Londons that doesn't have magic. And I know King George was even saying, "Oh, give me a coin. I feel the magic slipping from this one." Because I don't want to name off all the different Londons until we get to them. But specifically since we're starting with Grey London, that's one that doesn't have magic.
So my thought in this part was I noticed right away that they were keeping the king of Grey London locked up. So that was the first thing that I kind of latched onto as I was reading. So the way that he describes this king is King George. He seems to be old and frail and not really like any type of threat. So, it was surprising to me that he was in a room that Kell mentioned locked from the outside, not the inside. So it's like he's being held captive like a prisoner. Another thing that I noticed is that Kell was kind of being a little more kind to him than he needed to be. And so I wondered, like, is that out of pity or some type of sympathy? And why is that? Does he like empathize with him for another reason that might be revealed later?
And I think that's a great segue into our next section, because I think that really sheds light on that, because that's when we get our first introduction to that magic, right? Where Kell is needing to go into a different part of Grey London. And so we start getting some geographic layout of the city. Kell refers to the Thames, right? And so we realize that Grey London is our London. And so when he says Ostasan, that's to transfer, really, like, to me, that kind of meant like teleport, right? Like he's just going to somewhere else in that same city. And we see the Prince Regent, and, the conversation between Kell and the Regent is not as kind as Kell was being to the king, right?
I know this is going to come later. I know that we're going to get into like bigger discussions about like his traveling abilities, right? But what's the point of having an ambassador? Because I know that that's what they call him, right? He delivers messages among the different royals from each London. Like, I honestly do not see the point in that. And that was the first question I had when I thought about like, okay, the Antari are super rare. They're delivering messages from royal to royal for what point? Like, what if they're not even allowed to kind of like visit each other in each other's world? What's the point of writing to each other? Because I think that this part started out with Kell talking to King George about or from one of the different Londons, right? Like he was reading off a letter or something. And so I was like, what's the point of that? Like, I don't understand the ties that need to be made there. So that was really my thing here. It was more just questioning. I wasn't really latching on to anything else.
Yeah. So I do want to touch on the way that Kell travels between the worlds and also how he teleports within the worlds, because he has to cut himself and then use his blood to draw like runes. And that's what allows him to travel between these worlds and through these worlds. And so I thought that was a really interesting way to go about like putting together a magic system in a book. Like I haven't seen that before. Like maybe it's been typically not the main magic system in books that I've read. It's typically something that's like, you know, the dark ones do that, or, you know, that's like a no-no typically. So I thought it was interesting that that's his main source of power. And they even talk about like blood magic being almost like the most powerful level of magic. And only the Antari, which is what Kell is, have the ability to wield this type of magic. So I thought that was so interesting and like kind of a cool way to like flip things on their head. If you're like a fantasy reader, that's pretty different.
And we also get introduced to his coat more in this section where, you know, he kind of, I always call it like he turns his coat, and his coat actually has more than just an inside and an outside. It has different forms. It reminded me of like Hermione's bag in Harry Potter, where, you know, it's kind of like, I don't know.
Okay, I forgot to write this in
Charmed.
my notes, but I love that you brought up the coat. So for those of you who don't know, when I went to college, I majored in apparel merchandising. So I've always really enjoyed just like the art of dressing yourself and like what that means. And especially like in film and in storytelling, like it matters. So like one of my favorite book series is The Hunger Games. And as you all know, the costuming in that was so important to the storytelling. And that's why I loved the way that they did the movies. The costuming I thought was like right on point. And so with this book, you know, in Kell's magic coat, I'm just loving how, you know, he also turns his coat to fit the environment that he's going into. And so like he's wearing it as like a red coat like in the first scene of the book, but then he turns it to a black coat to go meet with King George. And then he turns it again when he's going to like a less formal environment. Again, that's just adding to the storytelling and like setting the scene. And for me, like I always pay attention to, you know, what people are wearing because it can have some symbolic meaning.
All right. The next part in this section, we're still in Grey London, but, you know, now Kell is done with his ambassador duties and he's going to a different part of Grey London called the Stone's Throw, which is a pub. And it's a special kind of pub because we learn that it doesn't matter what London you're in, there is a pub always in this location. And in Grey London, that would be the Stone's Throw. And so he's familiar with this place. And we learn, I love this part because we kind of get a little bit of sassiness from Kell because we learn that he is doing some things that are kind of unsavory, where he is bartering and selling magic artifacts. And that's like a no-no. So you don't take things from one London and bring them to another. And so there's two different kinds of people here. There's either collectors or there are enthusiasts, and he does not care for the enthusiasts. Those are the people that he's deemed that have heard about magic, are intrigued by magic, and want to do magic. Like they actually want to practice it, even though they have no idea what it's about. And lo and behold, one such person sits down right next to him when he's clearly expecting someone else, and it just kind of shits on his day.
Yeah, so I thought this was such an interesting scene because earlier when he was with King George, Jen, I think, mentioned it that King George was asking him for another coin because he felt like the one that he had given him before had lost its magic. And then Kell mentions that it's against the laws of magic to transfer between the worlds any artifacts or items. The only thing that can be transferred is the messages between the royals. And so like at first he like adamantly is like, no, we do not do transference. And then he goes to this pub specifically to deal in magical artifacts. So I thought that was interesting. And it's because it's supposed to be against the laws of magic to do this. And then my other question was, who's enforcing this law? Is it the royals? And what is the consequence of doing this, if the royals find out? Or is it magic itself that'll, create some type of punishment for doing this? But we find out that Kell's been doing this. Like he does this regularly. So I'm interested to see what may come about from all of these transferring of items.
So for me, I kind of had the same question that Stephanie mentioned about the transferring of items. Like, what is it that happens when you transfer items? Can they tamper with the magic itself? Especially since some of these Londons don't have magic. Some have magic, some don't. Some have it more tame than others. What happens? Because if he's been doing this for a while, like clearly magic itself is not punishing him because it continues to happen. He continues to transfer these items and no royals have caught him. So yeah, he hasn't been punished for it. But what does the item itself, what is that going to do? Because he even mentioned it whenever he did run into that enthusiast where that enthusiast was asking for like a lump of dirt from one of the Londons with magic. And, their hope from that was to draw the magic out of the dirt, right? And Kell was like, that's not going to work. Like, that's never worked before. It's not going to work now because they know that it's tied to blood. But my question there was, okay, then if they can't take the magic out of these items, then what's so bad about transferring these items between the worlds? So I'm sure that's going to come up later, obviously, since that's a hobby of his. But honestly, the other thing that I'm wondering, okay, if magic doesn't exist in Grey London, and I'll get more into this later because, again, we get more into his blood magic later, but I'm wondering, he's just walking around delivering these messages and nobody wants to kidnap him or kill him. That'd be my initial thought. Oh, hey, there's somebody who can perform magic or who has magic. I want his abilities. I want to see what makes him tick. I'm going to kidnap him or something.
Well, that's the purpose of his coat, right? It's kind of a disguise. And then he also walks around with hair in front of his one magic eye. So he tries to keep a low profile depending on where he's at.
Yeah, and I think too, something that I really loved in this section, as Kell is talking to this enthusiast, right? He has this, what he basically calls a toy back home. It is this artifact that has, 6 different elements to test back where Kell is from, to test, a kid's magic ability, right? To see what kind of element they may be drawn to. He mentions all the different elements. You have, air, fire, water, earth, and then there's also another one of bone. And he says bone is the most difficult and for the most talented magic users, right? Basically, is what it comes down to. And then the enthusiast is like, well, you know what? I can't. He tries. He looks stupid. He's trying. He holds out his hand. He even's muttering some kind of incantation to himself. And through Kell's inner dialogue, we learn oh, magic doesn't really require that. He's already told, or he's already, talked to himself in his head that, bone is the most difficult, right? And the enthusiast calls him out. He's like, you're this is probably all fake anyway. You're a poser, basically. And Kell's like, oh, am I? And so he kind of peacocks a little bit. And he starts using not just one element, but all of them, including bone. So we realize that Kell is the real deal here. All right. So that kind of ends our Grey London section. We automatically get pivoted into a different scene, a different setting of 2 guards that are gambling. They're kind of being lax in their duties a little bit, but it's because Prince Rye has allowed them to do it, right? He's kind of this cool prince that's, on the level. And one guard leaves, but when he returns, he's caught off guard by seeing that his counterpart is no longer there. And so he kind of gets a little suspicious. He goes to investigate a little bit, but then he can hear voices, and so he goes to investigate. During that conversation, he realizes, I recognize the other voice. One is Prince Rye, and the other one is Holland, who we learn is another Antari, the Antari from the White London. And during that convo between Rye and Holland, we learn that taking items, again, across worlds is illegal. Second, suspicion is already cast on Holland here because he's apparently able to affect memory. Because as he leaves, he realized that, oh, shit, I got rid of one of you. And now, this other one has popped up. So he flipped. I thought this was so cool. I thought this was kind of like a cool flex. He flips a coin and Parrish catches it. And in between that time, Holland has done something to his memory because when Parrish looks up, Holland is no longer there, and he's like, well, what am I doing here? What am I doing here?
Yeah, so we find out there's only two Antari, Kell and this guy, Holland from White London. So the purpose of the Antari is that they bring messages to and from the different Londons to the royals specifically. But he has apparently already talked to the king and queen in Red London. And then he, on the side, decided to go visit the prince and give him this gift. And again, with the whole transference thing, it's not allowed, but he says he didn't do that, but I don't believe him. And he says it's from the king and queen of White London. And I'm like, why did they want to give him a gift? And what is this gift? Then he mentions that it's for strength, but we don't know what it is. And so I'm immediately suspicious of this. This is odd. This is off. And even the guard, when he notices that Holland is there, he's 2 weeks off from his regular rotation. And why is he in the prince's chambers and not with the king and queen? So yeah, all of this is off. The vibes are off, y'all.
Yeah, I didn't like what was going on here either. Although I thought that Parrish mentioned something about flirting. I was like, did I sense flirting happening? Because he said something about the prince having his flirtatious voice or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording of it. But I was like, why is there flirting? Why are they flirting with each other? Have they had a lot of different interactions, secret interactions like this? Is that why there's flirting going on? I don't know. But I put a little question mark there because I was like, all right, there's going to be more to this for sure later. The fact that he had to erase the guard's memory already puts high suspicion for me for Holland.
And I kind of feel like Holland might have been using the flirtatiousness against Rhee because we get the sense that Rhee is a bit of a rake, and he's just flirtatious by nature. And so they're using that as a weakness to do whatever it is that they're plotting.
I think also what keeps us on our toes a lot is that we get it's not choppy, but it's very different settings between chapters, or we're here, now we're here. There's no flow or continuation, easy continuation. It's meant to keep you on your toes. And so now, saying that we're back to Kell, who's in Grey London, he's going into Red London. From the description, it appears that he's walking through, some type of market or with all these different vendor stalls in Red London, and a little kid bumps into him. We get the sense that this kid was playing. He bumps into him by accident. And from this exchange that follows, we can see that the people of Red London clearly know who Kell is. We know that he's a traveler, he's the Antari, but outside of that, we don't know who else he is. And this scene really reveals that for us based off of, his black eye, right? Because we haven't mentioned that before, that his appearance, is perfectly normal with the exception of his black eye, and not punch you black eye, but a completely black eye. There's no white to his eye. It is all black. And so just from their expressions, I guess, or the way they talk to him and treat him, he's respected, but he's also feared. I feel like they don't want to mess with him. And so the way I envisioned it in my brain is that he, this child bumps into him, and then the child's mother bows to him, and he's like, oh crap. All right. That's the sense. He's like, no, don't do it. Oh, you did it. You bowed. And now everyone knows and sees him. And I feel like everyone kind of just created this wide space just so he could walk. He's like, oh, fine. And so he goes on about his business, and that's when he turns his coat again to get the red coat, and the line follows that it's a coat or the color of royalty as he steps onto the steps to the castle.
So from what I gather, Red London is where magic thrives. So this is the good London, right? It's not dreary, it's actually thriving. Like you said, people know who he is there. So it kind of goes back to what I said, he was just casually walking down Grey London. But here he doesn't really want to be seen or known because people do know he's a traveler. And so honestly, that was just my biggest pickup when we were talking about Red London, was this is a place where he thrives. This is where he's from. And this is the good London, the good place to go to, right?
Yeah. So my thought here is like, I really enjoyed the way he described, or he's like thinking about the market. He talks about it coming alive, and it's like around their river. That's like the heartbeat of where the magic comes from in Red London, and it glows red. So if you're thinking, this red river that's casting a red light on this market at night, and it's hustling and bustling, and he's trying to keep a low profile, just walking through it. And then as soon as he's found out, he said the way he describes that he can sense this tension, just like a ripple effect across the whole market when people realize who is walking among them. And then he thinks to himself, like, he's really uncomfortable with this type of attention. He was trying to avoid this. And then he thinks to himself, like, his brother thrives in this type of attention. He loves it. And so I almost got the sense he feels like the black sheep in the family. And so I latched on to that. He doesn't feel like, even though he's considered a royal and he's revered as the Antari, in Red London, he feels like an outcast almost.
Well, that really goes into like the next part too, because that's kind of what I want to talk more about. Like, I want to talk more about the royal family.
Yes, so we do get introduced to the royal family in the next scene. And so we're introduced to King Maxim, Queen Amira, and their son, obviously, we've already been talking about, who we find out is pretty much like Kell's brother. They're obviously, when we get here, they're obviously planning birthday festivities. And we get a kind of like a flashback scene revealing that Kell told Rhee in the past of what he was doing, and Rhee was not a fan of these unsavory activities. It presents the fact that, this is not a young adult fantasy series where all the good guys are good guys, all the bad guys are bad guys. This is a morally gray character of Kell.
Yeah, so I've been picking up on what Kell's feelings are, or like, I guess, how he sees himself and like the position he holds, not just in Red London, but as in Antari. He seems to not necessarily feel at ease. And so this scene where he was remembering that, so at first they seem to have a good relationship. They seem to get along. And like even Parrish, when back to the scene where Holland visits, he mentioned that Kell and Rhee sometimes would go out on the town and drinking together, and Parrish and the other guard would come out with them. And it seems like, they have fun together. They get along and stuff, as brothers do. They're having one of those nights. And then when Rhee finds out that Kell is actually transferring objects between these Londons, their dynamic completely shifts. And Rhee punches him. And that just seemed way off for me in like a sibling dynamic, And then later on, he's contemplating this rune scar that he has on his arm. And the rune scar, he says he found out later on that, or at some point in time, he found out that the rune scar is actually a memory spell that is supposedly illegal. So Kell doesn't really know where he got adopted from. He doesn't know anything about his previous family before he became a royal and was adopted by the royals. And even in this interaction, when he finds out about him transferring objects, tries to make him feel guilty. Like, do we not provide enough for you? Like, we've taken you in as family, and just like really condescending in a way. So now we know, like, he's an adopted son to the royal family, but he seems to be more of like a possession of theirs, which is odd to me.
So that's kind of what I gathered. Okay, so I don't like Prince Rhee. It's like, okay, they do seem to have like a good relationship right off the bat. Like, it's kind of like surface level, like they're great brothers, right? Kind of like what you were saying, Steph. Like they go out drinking together, they do all these things together. It seems like they have a really great relationship. But to me, like the vibes that I was getting was that he's this spoiled brat, and he's making Kell feel like, hey, you should be grateful that we took you in. You should be giving us things almost every day because we took you in. And so like, to me, that's not a good friend, let alone good brother, right? And it's almost like he's not giving him a chance to grieve his forgotten past, which makes me wonder, did they take him in and make him stay there and make him forget who his past was? So like, to me, I'm not getting very good vibes from the royal family. Like, I'm getting that, like, I'm jealous of you vibe, and I am gonna, potentially be throwing my title around to show you that I'm better. So I feel for Kell. I feel so sad for him, knowing that his name came from the fact that he had an engraving of KL. Like, he doesn't even know what his real name is.
Right, yeah, that's the engraving on a dagger that he carries. And so, like, he doesn't even really have a name. It's just came from these initials on a dagger that maybe came from his old family, but he doesn't truly know what his name is. That's sad.
So they have their discussion, but to that point, even Kell, even in Red London, right, where it is his home, he still feels the need to have his own space. So he makes his way over to the tavern, where he has his own room that he's kind of warded. And this is where all of his trinkets that he deals are kept, and the things that he keeps as souvenirs are kept, and specifically warded for that reason, so no one finds out about it. So in true Darker Shade of Magic fashion, we get another quick scene pivot, and now we're introduced to Lila Bard. And I think this is where things really start to pick up, because up until this point, it's really been exposition. And even in this part, it's still exposition because we're getting introduced to Lila, but things are starting to move at a quicker pace, I feel like, at this point. So we do get a POV switch. We're no longer a POV from Kell. This is Lila. And a little bit of a hot take, because I feel like Lila is really loved in the Darker Shade of Magic community. When I read this book the first time, I was not a fan of Lila at all. And reading it this time around, I love Lila, y'all. I do. I think she's scrappy. And I love the first line that introduces us to her, right? If a thing is worth having, it's worth taking. And that is clearly the rule that she lives by. And so she has an interaction with the constable of the town, who thinks that she's a man because of the way she's dressed and the way her hair is. And Lila's being a little sneaky, right? She doesn't want to get caught. The constable begins a conversation with the very thief that he is warning her about.
Okay, so I instantly liked her. She obviously reminded me of like Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean, which was my favorite character from those movies. So she fancies herself a pirate, but she just needs a ship. That's the one thing she's missing, which I thought was just so funny. And then she took pride in the fact that this constable was warning her about this, what do they call him? Like the shadow thief or whatever. And so she loves that she has built her name for herself through her thieving, which I thought was funny.
So right now, I started reading Powerless because Stephanie actually just finished reading this trilogy. And of course, the more she hyped it up, I was like, I have to read it, right? So Lila actually reminds me of Peyton, which is the FMC from Powerless. And because she's also a thief, and she's also scrappy, and she also has to make sure that she outwits everybody, right? And so that was exactly what I thought of, especially because I'm reading it like right now too. So I really did like that. A girl's got to do what a girl's got to do, right? Especially when you're thrown into a world that you have nobody to lean on. And one thing that I did notice, like, I guess because we're so used to picking up subtle hints from Rebecca Yarros, that the way it started was her talking about this stolen item that she had. It was like a pocket watch that was engraved LLE, right? And we had just finished talking about Kell's engraved knife that was KL. And so I thought, is it a coincidence that there are two engraved items that each character is talking about? Like, does that just mean that, like, because they're both also very similar in the fact that they have no past, right? Their past is unknown. And then they're both having these engraved items in their hands. So I was like, okay, what are we foreshadowing here? Like, obviously these characters are going to come together in some way, but what's going to happen, and what is the significance behind those engraved items?
Yes, I think...
Well, she stole that off of someone. So what if it was one of the items that he transferred? That'd be interesting.
That is interesting. I didn't think about that. But speaking of that, since you brought that up, and also, Jen, to your point, like a girl's got to do what a girl's got to do. In this next scene, boy, does she do what she's got to do. And so first, to your point, Steph, like maybe this is one of the items that Kell has brought into this world. And we know that this world that we're in is Grey London because she's getting to the Sea King where she lives, and it's this ratty, tattered old boat, and it's no good for sailing. It is just stationed at the dock, but it's on the Thames. And so we know immediately this is Grey London. And then we're introduced to the despicable character of Powell, who is Lila's landlord, so to speak. And he asks her for rent, basically. And she's like, I'll give it to you later. And he's like, well, no, you can give it to me now in the form of not money. I'll take you and, have my way with you, basically. And she straight up kills this son of a bitch. And I was like,
valid.
Damn, like,
I was gonna say,
right?
as she should.
Yeah, like and I love that it doesn't shy away from it, right? Like we really, and it sets the tone even more that, because I guess up until this point, I had been so used to young adult fantasy because that was my wheelhouse. And like, this is the moment that I realized, like, no, we're not young adult here. He was trying to have his way with her, and she was like, nope, not today, Satan. And she let him have it. And Powell is Powell no more. And not only does she kill him, she freaking burns the boat down. So I was like, man,
That was
she's
crazy.
really not having it.
She made sure that job got done.
It sure did. And that nobody found the evidence of what happened there. Yeah, I mean, again, one of the reasons why I did like her too is because she was not going to let somebody just walk all over her. Like, no, you are going to defend yourself because unfortunately, sometimes you have to be this independent person that cannot rely on other people, and you got to do what you got to do. And so she did. She defended herself. She didn't let him do what he wanted. And so again, made me like her even more.
Yeah. So before Powell came to her door to demand her part of the rent, she was like taking off all her weapons, and then you actually find out that she's only 18 in this scene because she was like looking at herself in the mirror, and she's like disguised as a man, and she's thinking about like all the women that she steals from that are like dressed in frilly dresses, and she's like poo-pooing on that. But she's like also going through items that she has stolen, and one of which is a map that she mentions is not labeled. So earlier when Kell was in his room where he keeps all his trinkets and items that he's traded for, he mentions there's 3 maps of the different Londons that he travels between. And so something that's interesting about these worlds is that like in each of these worlds, like the country that London is in is a different country, but each one of them has this city called London, but the river in each one is named something different, and the different landmarks are named different things. And so back to the scene with Lila where she's looking at this map and she says it's her favorite item, but it's unmarked. And so again, I'm wondering, is it one of the items that Kell transferred? Because she stole this map off of someone, so no telling where it came from. And so I'm wondering if it has some connection to Kell.
Well, I'm wondering now that you said that Kell had the different Londons on his wall, like he had the white, the gray, the red London, like, is this one Black London? Because it kind of gets mentioned a little
I didn't put
later.
that together.
But I mean, if it's like unlabeled and we don't really hear much, or especially right now, like we were only 5 parts in, right? But like, is that a map to Black London? Because the only thing I picked up from this map, like I didn't even put all of that together. I didn't put the fact that like Kell had maps and everything. Like that wasn't a piece. The only thing I kept thinking was this is just like foreshadowing that Lila's going to have a huge adventure. That was it. That was literally like the only thing I was thinking of. I was like, oh okay. Yeah, she's going to have a great adventure. Like this is what the map foreshadows.
I bet you're right though, because in Kell's room, he only had red, gray, and white London maps. And he had mentioned before that there used to be a Black London, but something happened with the magic, and that's why now there's no transference allowed between the Londons because of whatever happened in Black London. So like, oh my gosh, maybe it is the map to Black London. And she has no idea what it is because like the people in Grey London, for the most part, besides the royals, don't even know that there's other worlds where there's like parallel Londons, you know?
Right.
That's crazy.
Y'all, I'm so glad we started this podcast because I cannot tell you that I didn't put any of that shit together. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just fate that like I picked up on the maps, right? But it's just magic. Like she just found this map by magic and like she's just destined to have it and she's destined to have that locket. But I never made any connect. I feel so stupid. But I love the idea that it could be the map of Black London. And so let's break that down real quick because we've been mentioning these Londons, but we haven't really explained it much. So there is Grey London, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the London that has no magic, which is, it's our London. And then where Kell is from is Red London. And that is where magic thrives. Magic is alive, it's well, it's healthy, and people use it and is just there. Then we have Black London, as we have mentioned, and Black London is a question mark. There's no traveler from Black London. We just know something bad happened to Black London. Mm-hmm. And then there's White London, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. But White London, I kind of love to hate. I love how each London is its kind of its own character, right? And White London to me is Umbridge. Like this is the Umbridge character where I kind of love to hate White London here because we learn that yes, White London has magic, but it's starving for magic. And when people have magic, it's like the wild, wild west over there. It's Game of Thrones. Being king or queen is up for grabs in White London, and you become by showing your force. But before we leave Lila, we get introduced to another character that's very important to her, Baron. Baron is the tavern keeper of the Stone's Throw. And we learn that has a history with Baron, that she lived in the Stone's Throw for a little while, but she took to her thieving ways. She's also morally gray, and Baron was not a fan and said, you can't do that and live here. So you need to go somewhere else. But after her interaction with Powell, he's like, you can stay here, but no one here at the Stone's Throw is a target for you. Like you're not going to steal from anyone here if you're going to stay here. And so she accepts, and that's kind of where she takes refuge. So again, the story turns just like Kell's coat, and now we're back to Kell. So this is a training scene that Kell is acting as tutor to the prince in magic. And we get the sense that magic is a struggle for the prince. It doesn't come naturally to him as it does to Kell, but it is a little interesting. And then we transition to King Maxim comes out and he gives Kell a task to go to White London, to deliver something to White London. And Kell's like, I don't want to go to White London, basically is the attitude that he has. But of course, being the dutiful ambassador that he is going to go. And this is where we are introduced to two more characters that honestly scare the shit out of me. Like, I think they are so cool, but I also never want to meet them. So we are introduced to the king and queen, siblings of White London, Astrid and Athos Dane. They are twin rulers of White London. We find out as Kell is remembering an interaction with someone in the Scorched Bone, which is the tavern in White London. It's very welcoming and cozy, it sounds like. But he's remembering an interaction with someone in the Scorched Bone that Holland also went after the throne at one point in time in White London, because we remember White London is like the wild, wild west, right? Whoever has the most power and is able to show that gets the crown. But the twins outsmarted him. And not only did they outsmart him, we find out that the twins bound Holland to their will.
So I was suspicious from when King Maxim told him that he needed to go to White London. Because King Maxim comes, says to Kell, oh, I need you to deliver this note to White London. Because the last time that Holland was here, he didn't have time to wait for the response. But we know that last time Holland was in Red London, he did have time. So I don't know. I'm suspecting King Maxim here. I'm honestly suspecting the Red Royals because of the way they adopted Kell as a possession.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has good intentions. Like, any of the royals we've met, I feel like have not had very good intentions at all. Like, I think they're all a little power hungry in different ways. And you're seeing it more in White London because that is the name of the game, right? Is to be the most powerful. And clearly we're seeing that Holland is also power hungry. And so that just even adds more to my suspicion that Holland is not a good person. He may be a little quieter about it and is a little bit more sneaky about the way he's going about it. But the fact that he tried to go for the throne and the fact that he's an Antari, which means he's really powerful.
So we don't go see Astrid. Like this, the next scene is not Astrid. We go to Athos, who is doing some freaky stuff. So Athos, he's trying to exert his dominance over this group of people, and this poor kid is trying to defy him, and he shows defiance in his eyes, and Athos was like, you're my next experiment. And he's whipping this kid for showing defiance, and then he just realized this kid is like, you can do whatever you want. Like, I'm not backing down. And Athos was like, I believe you. So here's what I'm going to do. And so that's when he starts carving this rune in this poor kid's chest. And through the use of magic, we now know how they have bound Holland to their will, because this is exactly what they're doing to this kid. With this rune, this kid can't think for himself, right? Like whatever Athos says for him to do, he's going to do now, whether he wants to or not. It's not in his control. And Athos, this is what freaks me out even more. Like Athos says, I'm going to still let you have your brain because I want to see the struggle in your eyes when I tell you to do something, and you have to do it even though it is against every fiber of your being. I'm like, oh, that is like the worst.
Yeah,
So-
this guy like enjoys torturing people, like you can tell. And something about like, so we have when Kell gets to White London, he mentions how he walks through the city to get to the castle. He says like he wants to almost show enough power so that nobody tries to do anything to him, but not too much so that it doesn't drive too much attention to him, because he knows that, again, Ethan mentioned earlier, this London is starved for magic, and it's like a brutal environment. It's dog eat dog. And so he's trying to toe the line of like, I want to make sure people know not to mess with me, but not enough that like too many people want to like gang up on me or something. So it's a scary world. And then we go to Athos and he's torturing this poor kid.
So one thing that I picked up on as you were talking, because it wasn't even in my notes, the only thing I mentioned was that this whole freaking scene was disturbing. But as you were talking and talking about the rune and how he did that to the kid, and I had completely forgotten about the fact that like he made him keep his brain so that he could see that struggle. But Kell made a comment about Astrid having a rune that lets her, is it speaking the different languages? Okay, so he mentioned like they fall on rune. They depend on runes to do a lot of their magic, that they're too lazy to like even use their magic to learn different things. That instead of doing that, they just throw on runes. Like, oh, I want to do this, I'm just gonna throw on a rune. I want to do this, I'm just throwing on a rune. So like clearly that's how they control a lot of what their environment is. Instead of actually wielding their power, it's really they're just forcing their runes on people so that they can just keep control.
I didn't even pick up as lazy. I thought of it as because it's so starved for magic that they had to use runes like to kind of like Violet and Onyx Storm, Fourth Wing, good gracious, we just talked about it. But she had to have a conduit, right, to better hone and discharge her magic. That's kind of how I thought of it. But I could totally see it as being, arrogant in that sense, because White London is very arrogant and dog eat dog, like you were saying. So yeah, totally.
Well, I thought Kell said, oh, how lazy of them to just not even try. Like they're just going to throw in a rune. I have to go back.
When he was walking through the city, he mentioned that like the normal people in the city, a lot of them are covered in these runes to try to bind magic to their bodies because, everyone in this world is starved for magic. And in Red London, he takes note that is looked down upon. It's like a base level of magic, but they use this to. I think that White London is just grasping at straws for anything that could help tilt the power in their favor. Like we've mentioned several times before, the throne is up for grabs at all times. So everybody has to be on their toes, even the royals. So you basically have to be the most brutal in this world to be at the top.
Right. Better be feared than loved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So that's Athos. Next, we get introduced to Astrid, who's just as freaking scary. And what's impressive is that she doesn't really do much in this scene, but just the way she's speaking to Kell, the way that the environment is described, because Kell's walking into the throne room to go see her, and he thinks to himself, like, the floor is like ivory, and he's like, gosh, it's rumored that, you know, the bones of her foes are what create this floor. I'm like, I don't want to walk on this floor. Like, that's creepy. It's so creepy. And we get the sense that Astrid maybe even feared by her brother a little bit, just because of how he's talking to Holland at the end of his scene, torturing that poor kid. And he's like, well, let's go try to rescue Kell from my sister, is what he said. I'm like, ooh, like if you're this scary and you're saying that about your sister, I can only imagine. And so she reminds me, the way she's written, she reminds me of Charlize Theron in Snow White and the Huntsman. I don't know if you'll have ever seen that, but just like that stately, you know, mean, like that's how I imagine her. Or maybe even Emily Blunt's character, the Ice Queen in the second one. Maybe that's a little bit more like very cold and frigid. But yeah, that's what I think of Astrid here. And I kind of giggled at the scene a little bit because, you know, Athos and Astrid join. Everyone's in the same room. Holland, Kell, Athos, and Astrid, and they're talking and trying to show Kell their strength here. They command Holland to cut himself and fill up a cup with his blood, and then they ask Kell, "You want a drink?" He's like, "I'm good on blood right now. I'm okay." Like, that's how I read it.
So
Yeah, totally.
I was getting Amarantha vibes from ACOTAR. So whenever they were talking about the throne room and they were talking about like her sitting there and like commanding for Kell to like get closer, I like kept imagining Amarantha in my head. I'm like, totally the same, just ruthless, just vile, like just I hated Amarantha. So glad she only, well, spoiler warning, like glad she only lasted for one book, because I was like, I just couldn't do more of Amarantha. But I obviously power play here, right? That's exactly what I got from this. But now I have like a question about the fact that like with the blood, like, okay, drinking the blood, is that to keep, because they drank the blood after Kell said no, is that to keep their own power going? Like, since the Antari used their blood for magic, if you can drink the blood, or if you can take the blood of an Antari, does that kind of give you some kind of magic from that? Like, does that give you some kind of power? And if so, like, why are they not being hunted down, right? Are they getting something from it, or is it just a power?
I think they do, because when they describe her appearance, specifically Astrid, so her skin is pale, like paper thin, he describes, and her veins are turning black under her skin. So I think it's corrupting their bodies to be doing this, but I think they are doing it for his power. Like, I think maybe consuming it, maybe not, you know, permanently, but for, you know, maybe a short period of time gives them some like boost in power or something, but it's definitely at a cost. Like, she looks gross from the way he describes her. So I think it does give them some power. And, you know, like, again, in Red London, where things are a little bit more orderly, they don't like use base levels of magic. Like, that's looked down upon probably. And so that's why Kell was like disgusted. He was like, no blood for me, please. Can I bother you for something else?
Which is a perfect segue into the next part, because they do offer him something else, right? They offer him just like regular alcohol. And Kell, like, this is where I was like, come on, Kell. Like, you've got a job to do. And it confused me, because I was like, you already don't want to be there. And you're extending your stay basically by not just drinking one of these drinks, but he has multiple, and he gets drunk. So he's had his 2 drinks. He's clearly intoxicated. He's walking the streets of White London, which is fairly reckless, because we get the sense that it is the Wild Wild West. It's dangerous there. And he's stumbling through these roads. A mysterious woman approaches him, right? We don't know who this woman is. We don't see her face, but she seems to know who Kell is, that, you know, he's an Antari. She asks him to deliver a letter, and as payment, she places something in his hand. So she knows how he likes to be paid. He doesn't want money. Before Kell is able to say anything, he looks up and the woman is gone.
I'm just looking at all of this with suspicion. I feel like there was something in the drink that they gave him, because he takes a glass and then he like just shoots it basically. And he was like, I didn't mean to do that. And then like they pour him another immediately. And then again, he drinks it pretty quickly. And I think he ends up having 3 drinks. And then afterwards, he's like stumbling around White London. Several times while he's walking around, he mentions that his brain feels foggy. And then when he looks up and he's in front of the scorched bone, the specific quote is, he hadn't meant to head for the tavern. His feet just set out on their own, and his body made its way there. So I think that, because they mentioned before that one of the twins he's kind of adept at binding people to his will. So I think they did that to him. And I think that they caused him to, even though he didn't mean to, and he knew it was dangerous, to drink all of that, and whatever that was, forced him to go to the scorched bone, specifically to encounter this mysterious woman and retrieve this package, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I question the fact that like he kept drinking with them. You're becoming vulnerable. That's why they tell you to go out with friends that you trust, right? And I get maybe like not wanting to turn down one drink because you don't want to upset them, and maybe like, potentially, get their angry side. Like I get that part, but then you just kept going. Like, dude, did you not learn from your first drink that you're not supposed to be doing this? Like, I don't know. I just questioned that whole thing. Like, I don't understand. He was being very un-Kell-like. And then the other thing I was wondering too, how often is he forced to go to White London? Because to me, there was a lot of obvious hesitation, right? Like he didn't want to go. And then that made me think about the rune scar that he had and how he's a part of Red London. And so I thought, okay, like people are manipulating him in different ways to want to keep him in these different Londons, obviously because he is so powerful. And so now that Astrid made that comment, like that makes me nervous for him, because I feel like she doesn't get told no very often. And so now that she wants something, she's gonna find a way to keep him.
Yeah, well, I think the drink like caused him to continue drinking. Because I forgot his name. What's the brother's name? The twin?
Athos.
Athos. He drinks a little bit first, and he tells Kell, so I'm not doing anything to you. But I think he did.
Interesting. I didn't think about that.
Because he kept saying, like, even in his like inner monologue, he's saying like, I don't even know why I drank that so quickly. I shouldn't, like. And when he first gets into White London, he's like on alert, and he's trying to make sure that he's not bringing too much attention to himself. So I think there was something in the drink.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
See, I'm picking up on things that I was completely oblivious to, apparently. And it's my second time reading it. So now we're back to Lila's POV. Pace is picking up even more, like things are moving really fast here because we switch back from Lila and Kell in this one section multiple times. So we're back to Lila. She walks past a boy beggar and she gives him some money. But then as she makes her way to the stone's throw, she looks back to that same boy who she gave money to. And there's basically a group of bullies that's picking on him and taking the money that she just gave him. And so Baron sees her and he's like, hey, don't do it. Don't be stupid. Don't go after them. You're outnumbered here. And she's like, whatever. And so she goes. She does have some kind of sense of justice, right? And she's just not having it. So she goes after these boys. She's very confident that she can retrieve the money and make it right. And then we go back to Kell, who is back in Red London, doing the job that this mysterious woman set out for him. So he wants to deliver this letter. But when he gets there, he senses something is wrong. And he sees this figure in the distance of where he's supposed to deliver this letter to. And he was like, this is weird. And so he opens the letter and it's completely blank. And he realized that he's been set up. And as soon as he realizes that figure senses him and starts to give chase. And so he starts to run. Then we're back to Lila, right? So Lila, she catches up to this gang of thieves. She quickly realizes, oh man, Baron was right. I'm outnumbered here. And the gang recognizes her. Like, oh, you're the thief. Now, like, we have you and we can turn you in for money here. And so she hightails it and she starts to run. And then we're back to Kell, who is being pursued. During the chase, he's injured. He yells, stop. And time seems to listen to him. So he notices that time has stilled. And that's the only way he was kind of able to break away from his pursuer. The reward Kell earned from the mysterious woman from White London is a small black stone that's thrumming as Kell yells stop. So this is enough for Kell to get away and travel to where these figures can't chase him, which is another London. We learn that it's Grey London.
Okay, so this part is obviously a lot more fast-paced. We're like back and forth between points of view between Kell and Lila, and they're both being pursued. So, but one thing, so when Kell in Red London notices that the letter is empty and whatever this item is has power and someone is after him, and he starts running towards his room where he keeps all his trinkets. And he mentioned before he got, no, while he was in there, he was looking at this stone that he got from this mysterious woman in White London. And he says, I think he said it's a black stone and it's got the Antari symbol for magic on it, Vitari. And it's like buzzing with power. He can feel it in his palm. Like, it made me wonder if it was like another Antari's eye, because they mentioned earlier that an Antari's one eye is completely black. And so I'm like, ooh, is that like one of an Antari's eyes or something? So that creeps me out. But something about like, so whoever's running after him ran up to his room, but it was weird because he had actually warded this room so that only he could enter the room. But the package that the stone was wrapped in actually had a tracking spell on it. So that's how they were able to get up into his room. And so I'm like, okay, this was clearly a setup, and like all of the royals are involved. I feel like this, like for some reason they're trying to get this piece, this magical artifact from White London to Red London, and then like possibly kill Kell. Like, what does this mean? And whoever was running after him had a royal guard sword. And he mentioned that Kell had actually performed this like spell work on the royal guard's swords so that whoever it cuts, it would dampen their power. And that's why he had to use the stone to get to Grey London. So I don't know. I feel like someone's trying to murder Kell for his power.
Well, it goes back to what I said earlier, right? It was like my initial thought when I started reading the book was like, why wouldn't you want to go after Kell for his power? Why wouldn't you hunt him down and take it for yourself? But like you said, they were setting him up. Clearly, we're seeing a lot of suspicion on the royals and stuff, because I thought that too. They gave him this letter and this powerful stone. Did they not think that he was going to open it and figure out what it was? Like, did they really think that he was just going to blindly take it and then they were just going to jump him and then that was it? Like, I don't know. Like, to me, it just was a very poor setup, and he didn't even know what it was either, but he mentioned it being connected to Black London. And so my thought here was like, okay, if that one stone could stop time, could help him transport or whatever, could do more than his blood magic, how powerful was Black London and what the heck happened? Like, I want to know what happened in Black London. Like, and obviously they're after this artifact, right? They're after this stone. Clearly it's super powerful.
And to me, I kind of picture like the way it's written is very movie-like, right? Like I'm picturing Born Identity almost in my head, right? Like super fast-paced. You see one scene over here, you see another scene over here. They're happening in tandem, and then everything kind of meets together. And it gives, I guess, a little bit of purpose as to why Lila was where she was because the next scene is they actually do bump into each other. And in true Lila fashion, she takes it as an opportunity. She must think super fast, like, he's wearing a nice coat, like, I must steal it, like whatever's inside of it. And so she acts as a pickpocket, and unbeknownst to Kell, who is injured, so like we'll give him some grace there of why he didn't pick it up and register it. But yeah, she steals the black stone from him, and he's none the wiser. So that's where this section, our first section of Darker Shade of Magic, ends. So what do we think about that that first meetup of our two main characters?
So Lila, we know, is a morally gray character. She's a thief by trade. But she kind of has a hierarchy or like a moral compass in her head where like she will steal from people she feels deserve it. And she didn't like that this group of older boys who were about her age, and we know she's around 18, so like 18, maybe early 20s, preyed on this little boy who was maybe 9 or 10, and took like a few coppers from him, like someone who probably did, like that was probably all he had to his name. That poor kid, he was begging and she had given him a few coppers. And so like I think that scene just serves to show like she may be a thief, but like don't get it twisted, she only thieves from people that can afford to be stolen from, I guess,
Yeah, I can totally see that. Like I said, I knew it was going to set up for the scene specifically. I loved the way it ended, and I think it was a really great way to end our discussion. It's like these two characters we're talking about now meet. Obviously, she stole this like really precious item from Kell in the middle of him being injured. So it's like, how is he going to get it back? What's going to happen? How are they going to get along? Like all these questions are now happening in my head.
All right, book friends, that's the end of our deep dive. Now we're going to discuss some of our predictions and final thoughts as we wrap up this section. So, Steph, why don't you start us off here?
Okay, so I think I already mentioned this before as we were talking about what happened with Kell and that weird stone. But I think that the royals from White London and Red London collaborated to set Kell up. Because and I think that specifically because him obtaining the white stone or the stone in White London, like obviously the Dane twins maybe mix something into his drink to cause him to go encounter that woman. But then also, like I mentioned, King Maxim said to him that last time Holland was here, he didn't have time to, take this note back to White London. So I need you to take it now. And then also the people who were pursuing him all had those royal swords. So like a member of the royal family would have had to provide that to them. Also, the people who were pursuing him, they had been like a spell had been put on them because he noticed that they like all they were saying was surrender, surrender. And then at one point he actually did cut one of them and they didn't react at all. So it was like there was some type of spell put over them. And he had mentioned before that the Dane twins kind of like this is their MO. This is what they do to people is they put spells on people to bind their will to them. So I think they were collaborating in this. So that's my theory.
So my theory is I think it was Holland and Ree who set him up specifically. Like, I mentioned earlier that I think all the royals are suspicious except for King George. But specifically, I think Ree and Holland, especially because they already had this like sneaky interaction in the very beginning where, Holland was there to drop something off. They try to cover up the evidence of him being there. I'm not getting very good vibes as far as being like a concerned brother looking out for his for Kell. I think he's more jealous and power hungry. And I think that, trying to attain this like black stone and something that's super powerful is going to make him better than Kell. And so I think that he is using Holland. So maybe it's the other way around where like he was flirting with Holland to try to get something out of him. So I think they're using each other, obviously. And I think that he just wants to be more powerful and better than Kell. Like, I don't think he has very good intentions. And just like a final thought going, like after discussing and reading this part, like I really like the book so far. It's very interesting. I'm very curious to find out more about Black London. The stone is obviously very powerful and it's connected to Black London. So I know shit's about to get real. So I'm really excited about that.
And like I said, it's been a while since I've read this book. Like, we're talking years. So, and I don't have the eagle eye memory that Jen and Steph have once they've read a book. Like sometimes I easily forget and it takes me, like Jen can even attest, like we've had conversations and you're like, you don't remember that part? I'm like, no, I don't.
That is very true.
It is so true. I remember the gist of a book and I remember enjoying it, but I don't necessarily remember all the details that go with it. And so that makes the reading experience even more fun because I feel like I'm reading it all over again.
All right, you guys. So that wraps up our discussion of parts 1 through 5 of A Darker Shade of Magic. Next time, we're going to be discussing sections 6 through 10. So make sure you read through those before you listen to our next episode next week. And then please remember to to interact with us on social media. We are Books Between Friends Pod on all platforms. We would love to hear your thoughts and theories and predictions as well. So, comment, let us know what you guys think. And we look forward to hearing from you guys through all of our social channels. And then we also want to say we were so excited to send a free copy of A Darker Shade of Magic to one of our book friends. And, y'all can still participate in this. So make sure to find our link in our bio or our link tree. And if you see the link that says read along list, that's what we're talking about. We are going to be giving away one free copy of every book we review. And our next one will be The Nightingale. So please go ahead. And if you haven't already filled out our read along list, do so. You might get a free copy of our next book.
All right, friends, the journey through the Londons is about to get a whole lot messier. Our favorite magical duo faces new enemies, impossible choices, and some seriously intense magic. There are secrets unearthed, powers tested, and let's just say, not everyone plays fair. Grab your coat, steady your nerves, and get ready to step through the next door, because things are heating up and there's no turning back. Don't miss the next episode of Books Between Friends as we dive deeper into A Darker Shade of Magic by V. Schwab.
That's a wrap for Books Between Friends today. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next chapter.